Oh gosh, I'm so tired. I could just collapse. What is that red thing back there? Um, my appointment went really well, and um, yeah, this doctor's just a really good doctor, and it's just that I have such severe medical PTSD. Um, so my this sounds like super good news, but it isn't necessarily unless something happens, unless uh, help comes afterwards. But he has approached one of the neurosurgeons to ask about surgery, Chiari surgery, and if not, then to try to get me a trach. And what probably should be happening here is the Chiari decompression surgery. Oh my god, I'm so tired. I could just talking is enough to make me pass out. Like, I feel like I could have a heart attack or a stroke. I'm just so profoundly tired. I just can't handle it. Um, Gosh, I feel so ill. Um, so ideally, we would want to get me Chiari surgery, and if they don't want to do that, then a trach, and to assist me to sleep. We have to get me sleeping and breathing all right, you know, and if they don't want to do Chiari surgery, then a trach. A trach would bypass the narrow nasopharynx, the narrow airway. It would bypass the jaw issue about needing to move the jaw forward to breathe. It would bypass the sinus pain caused from the CPAP and the open sinuses. It would bypass the trigeminal pain that the trigeminal nerves, the CPAP just crushes these nerves in here and just makes, so much pain. And so it would bypass all those issues: the narrow throat, the jaw issue, the sinuses, and the trigeminal nerves if I were breathing through here, right? And then if the drive to breathe is still an issue, the drive to breathe is me not breathing often as I should. And at night, I know I breathe, even back in the 80s, I was doing a relaxation breathing class with a bunch of people, and you're supposed to hold your breath for a long time and then, exhale real slow and all these different breathing exercises. Well, I can hold my breath like 2 or 3 times longer than a normal person, and that's not normal. That's either a good thing or a bad thing. And in my case, it's a bad thing. It means that I am not breathing often enough, and that's coming from the brain. It's not coming from the lungs. And so, and when you have a reduced drive to breathe, when all of us fall asleep, we are breathing slower than we do in the daytime. So when I sleep, I breathe much slower and I lack oxygen. And CPAP, it doesn't just keep your throat open, it can keep your oxygen higher as well because it's blowing air into you. It does keep your oxygen up. And even though oxygen isn't attached to your CPAP, if your oxygen is really low consistently, they can attach oxygen to your CPAP machine as well. But you have to meet the criteria. Your oxygen has to be low enough for long enough. And like let's say below 80 something for so many hours, or below 80 something for 30% of the night, or 50% of the night, whatever their criteria is. I've never had oxygen on my CPAP, but I can't, I've worn CPAP for years. I just can't do it anymore. It's not doable, even at the risk of death. I can't do it anymore. And so if my oxygen, if I get a trach and my drive to breathe is still a serious problem, then you can have the trach. I think a lot of people, I don't know much about this, but I think a lot of people with a trach are hooked up to a PAP machine, or device that makes them, literally makes you breathe, forces you to breathe all night, which that would be way easier than the painful CPAP. So we'll see what happens. I mean, he may not want to do a trach either. So it was a good appointment. And I also put an application in somewhere to see if they would pay for a mandibular device to advance my jaw while I'm asleep. They're $2,700, which I don't have the money. And my doctor will support me if the place needs my doctor to vouch for me, he will support me on that. But I can't go on like this, so sleep deprived, right? So hopefully pray for me. Hopefully one of those things happens. He knows, and I know, my family doctor, and I know that Chiari surgery it's probably what I need. It poses a much greater risk. I could end up in a nursing home after, or I, might not survive. You can wind up with all sorts of brain issues afterwards, all sorts of severe complications, or you might not survive. And that's totally not unheard of. It poses a way bigger risk. And I have EDS. I have a connective tissue disease, which means I rip and tear, and people with EDS have more complications with Chiari decompression surgery, because after they sew you up, your brain can slump down there, or if they put a mesh or something to hold your brain up after they cut the bone out, that may not stay there because our connective tissue is faulty, and I think we're higher risks for leaks and stuff. So it's even riskier surgery when you have EDS. And a trach, I could get a trach and maybe still not be sleeping, because let's say I'm not sleeping because of blocked cerebral spinal fluid flow in the brain when I'm asleep. So I could get a trach and still not be sleeping. And a trach is pretty drastic too, but a trach isn't life-threatening. A trach is, when I first had the idea about a trach, when I first thought I want a trach, I had no idea that this is a lifetime thing, and lots of maintenance and cleaning and draining, and some people have recurrent infections, and it's constant maintenance. But at this point, we're trying to take whatever we can get, if we can get anything. So it felt like a great appointment. But in reality, nothing may come of it, or I might get surgery. So that's the update with my appointment. But he's a good guy, my doctor, and I hate medical medical PTSD, but I mean I have it for a good reason. It's not fun. Anyways, I'm hoping and praying I can get help because I cannot go on like this.